KM, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate being here.
Nah,
It's a privilege.
it's absolutely my honor. We caught up, I don't know, was it 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, a little while ago, and you walked me through your story and journey, and it's pretty fascinating. So I'm keen to share it with the listeners, mate. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I've seen some of the guests you've had on before, and I hope people listening are like, oh, it's probably not worth listening to this one, compared to the other guests. So hopefully you get a few listeners anyway.
Not at all, mate. I wouldn't invite you on if it wasn't worth listening to. So I'm sure they'll be raring to hear your story. So I guess, yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey and where you've come from and how you've started to sort of build the portfolio and your sort of philosophy around building a portfolio and where that all originated from.
Yeah, so it's a long story, so I won't say the whole part, but I mean, from when I was young, I guess I don't know, I was always into finance or making money or business, and I didn't, and I'm talking when I was young, I'm talking like when I was 4 or 5 years old, like I was really young, but I didn't obviously understand the concepts, but I just had an interest. Like when everyone else was doing, something else, I was trying to sell my toys on the street to random people to make some money, and not to use that money for anything. I literally just, was saving it and didn't know why, but I had kind of like this liking for it. And then, through school, all my mates were doing, subjects like sciences and whatnot, and I was just doing business and economics and just learning about that, and it was just very interesting to me. And then finished school and didn't know what I really wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get into some sort of business, and wanted to work in business. And then my best mate, he applied to study optometry in Melbourne or in Geelong, and I was like, oh yeah, sounds fun. So I applied with him, and we got accepted. So I moved to Geelong to study optometry, which I had no interest in at all and disliked the degree the entire time I was studying it. But my idea behind that was we would finish the degree. It's a 5-year degree, but we would finish it in 3.5 years without taking a holiday or taking a break at the end of the year, doing an extra semester. And, optometrists get paid pretty well, or they did back then. I don't know about now. But for, I'll graduate uni, make some money. And my thought process was you don't need a business degree to get into business, but usually you need money. So I'll go make some money and then I'll transition out and do some sort of business. When I was at uni, I was like studying. So I was studying, and then I was also working 3 jobs, and I ran a perfume and makeup business online. I used to sell perfume to my lecturers, and in the exams I'd finish early and try and sell perfume or makeup to the people marking us and whatnot. And I was just making this money. I didn't know why, but I just, it's what I like doing. I had no interest in the optometry world and eyes and science and whatnot. Then I read a book. I think my dad, he had received a book from some seminar or something he went to, and he sent it to me. And it was called My 4-Year-Old, the Property Investor. I wish I knew the name of the person who wrote it, but you can look it up if anyone's interested. And
yeah, I think I've seen it. I can't. Was it the? It's not like the surfer dude. Now, I know there's a guy that's like.
Nah, it's not the surfer guy. It's I'm trying to look at my bookshelf. I can't see that far. It's too far.
I think I've read it. I've definitely like downloaded it, but I don't know if I've read it. But yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. I think I didn't know who it was written by, and my dad sent it to me, and I was in Geelong, and I had nothing to do, so I thought, yeah, I'll read it. And the book was written. The idea behind the book was that the author's 4-year-old son would be able to read the book and become a property investor. And I read it, and I was like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing in the world. Like, why isn't everyone investing in property and like doing all this stuff? And I was at the time, I was like 18 or 19, like I was pretty young, and it just changed my way of thinking completely. And from then on, I kept reading all these other books about property investing and wealth creation and whatnot. And then as soon as I graduated, I went and got a loan and bought my first property. I think I was 20 when I bought the first one. And yeah, that's how it started. And then it's just snowballed into, it eventually became my career. and continued buying property for myself and other people and friends and family, and yeah, it was a big snowball effect. I guess the other part to your question about my philosophy, well, at the start there wasn't a philosophy; it was just to buy something, you know. And but I think now it's that philosophy part of your question is really. I don't think I have a set. I know some people are like they have real set philosophies, like you have to buy high cash flow properties, or it has to be high capital growth, blue chip, suburbs, whatever, or negative gearing all the way. I don't think I have a set one size fits all approach. I think my philosophy is actually it's horses for courses. I think my philosophy is really your situation is going to be different to every single person out there, and based off that, we will build a portfolio that works for you. Because one person on a income of $60,000 has a different strategy completely to a dual income, both doctors or something on 700 grand a year. Like you're not going to put the same strategy in place. So I think that's actually my philosophy, and I think people's strategies will be ever changing. I know my strategies changed from day one and to what it is now, and it'll probably change again. But as long as you have your end goal already and you know where you're getting to, it doesn't really matter how you get there. It's just ever changing with life and circumstances. I don't know if I've answered your question. I just started talking.
No, you nailed it, and it's really good. And that's why I kind of like to tie people's backstory into that philosophy piece, because you can really sort of see people's journey and sort of where they've come. And I think the big thing with you is obviously that sort of career change. Like you studied really hard. You wanted to become an optometrist. Well, you didn't want to, but like you studied to become, and then you put the hard yards in, but you always had that passion for business and economics and everything else behind the scene. And I think that really, like, I love that. And that's my philosophy is like everyone is different. Everyone has their own journey. Everyone has their own goals, their risk profile. And you know what? Those things change as life goes on as well. Like when I had my daughter, my whole plan completely changed because you want different things out of life. And that's okay. As long as you're on the similar or same trajectory, but you just maneuver into a place or an area that you're happier with, then you just reassess as you go along. And I think you've nailed that. And I think your backstory demonstrates that is, you went hard at everything you did, but along the journey, you realized what you actually wanted out of a career, wanted out of life, and where your passion really was. And so you changed and manipulated that journey for what you wanted, which is awesome. But if you did have the chance to go back to young KM reading his first property book, or even sort of before then, but when you first started, I guess, what would you go back and tell yourself if you could?
Well, in general, regarding property portfolios.
A bit of both. If you've got one for both, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, potentially sort of regarding property. But yeah, if there's some young
I
life
mean,
advice you could give as well, 100%.
I mean, I guess it wasn't that long ago. So I like, a lot of people, I think a lot of people's answers to this question is like, oh, start earlier. I don't think I could have started really that much earlier. Regarding the property portfolio, what I would probably tell myself is just, it probably ties in with the other side to it, and just in general, is not to be scared. Don't be fearful of jumping into something that interests you, and just, because I mean, not that I was scared and I kind of jumped in straight away anyway, and that's kind of the guy I am. But I do remember when the contract came and, the loan docs came, and it was very scary, especially the first one. You're thinking, oh man, everything I read in these books, I hope is true, because I'm just signing my life away to this bank, right? And I think I would tell myself regarding building the portfolio is, just not to be worried. As long as you stick to the fundamentals of, the basic principles of, real estate that you've taught yourself, you'll be okay. And, you'll get to where you need to get to, and not to rush the process. Don't try and shortcut the process either, and just really let the properties do what they need to do the research properly, do the education properly, get the right team around you. If you don't know how to do something, don't try and do it yourself. Actually, that's a good one, because when I first bought it, I managed it myself, and never again will I do that, right? And the property managers are my favorite people in the world now. So that's probably what I would tell myself if I was studying again regarding building the portfolio. And I think in general,
as
you
well?
know, since when I graduated, I sold the perfume makeup business. Then I was working full time as an optom, and also I had started a restaurant. Um, and then sold the restaurant, moved into a sales position in optical, then quit that, and then ended up doing what I do now. Um, and I think all throughout that time, I was always just trying to do what would make me happy, and I would maybe it's not changing because I've already done that, but I would probably be reinforcing that idea of, yeah, don't be scared. You're young. You know, if you're going to make mistakes, this is the time to make mistakes, because we're going to make mistakes anyway. But you only learn when you fail. You don't learn really when you succeed.
Yeah.
So that's probably, yeah, that would be my answer, I guess.
Nice. I love it. And I think you're spot on. Like there's definitely an element of learning from other people's mistakes. And if you can learn to avoid a big mistake from someone else, I think that's great. But you definitely do need to make some mistakes on your journey to understand how hard they can be,
100%.
how hard they can be to go through, and then how to try and avoid other mistakes on that journey. So that's awesome, mate. And look, I always hear people sort of talking about like, I would never be a property manager. I'd never manage my property again. Like I was a property manager in the past, and I completely understand. Like it would be so difficult, and I don't know. But how did you do it? Like how did you like advertise for tenants and stuff? Did you just do like use realestate.com?
Yeah, well, the complicated part about it as well was the property was in Geelong, and I had moved back to Sydney, so it wasn't like the property was up the road or anything. So yeah, advertising was just just real estate. Oh, actually, there's a website called, this was a few years ago, so I'm trying to remember. I think it was called flatmates.com or something. I can't remember. And I think it was cheaper than using real estate, so I threw it on there, and we got someone that wanted to come in, and they were tenants, and just problems after problems after problems, mate. And obviously we didn't do a background check. Obviously we didn't check their income levels or anything, and all of this to save what, $30 a week, $20 a week, whatever it is. And the phone calls I would get in the middle of the night, and it's crazy stuff. And then eventually, I don't know if I'm going too far with this story, but eventually we got a phone call from like neighbors and something that the tenant was kind of, our tenant was kind of being a bit creepy. We had to call the police, get the police involved. We found out that they had a pretty bad criminal record. Ended up going down to Geelong to clear out his stuff after we got rid of him, and found like, weapons and stuff. So I was trying to pick my words so no one gets in trouble here. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, what a mistake that was. So never again. But ever since we got a property manager, we've had one on all the properties we own, and so much simpler. And they deal with all this stuff, and they make sure that you don't get these types of tenants in place. So that's definitely one of the biggest mistakes. It definitely cost a lot more than I would have paid in management fees.
That
That's for
is
sure.
absolutely crazy. And it's probably one of those like horror stories you'd hear. Like if you had like a really good tenant who you knew and like was consistent and like had a good job and always paid and like with no issue, I understand potentially self-managing. But yeah, if you're just like advertising and getting people to come through and then doing it that way, like I can just imagine the horror story. Like we run an Airbnb, or we have run an Airbnb in the past for quite a while, and yeah, you get some characters inquiring, and yeah, you do get those texts in the middle of the night of the internet's just gone out, or like the
Yeah,
toilet's just stopped working or something, and it is full on. So yeah, I can feel a little bit of your pain, but yeah, that's
100%.
that's a big
It's
story.
And even besides the money, I think it's just the time, like the time, and coming from a buyer's agent's perspective, like the amount of time we save other people, it's the same thing. Property managers saving your time. You don't want those phone calls after hours. You don't want those phone calls at all. You just don't want to deal with that stuff. Let someone else sort it out. And for the fee they charge, it's honestly nothing. They should be getting paid more, for sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
that's a mistake I wouldn't make again.
Yeah, nice. I like it. So tell me about the journey into becoming a buyer's agent, mate, because I mean, obviously you've had that whole background, you've had the whole business. an economics background when you were younger, and now you sold the business as you stepped out. What got you into property? What motivated you to start becoming a buyer's agent and sourcing
Yeah.
property? Were you always sort of that scroller to 2 a.m. on realestate.com, just going through everything instead of Instagram? Like how did that journey and transition look like?
Yeah, pretty much. Uh, I mean, I I actually didn't know what a buyer's agent was, and I didn't know this career existed. Um, and but I was really, so I bought the first one in Geelong, and there was a little bit of education and research behind that decision, and it fell into place with the strategy, and actually it's one of the best deals I've had, and so that worked well. But after I purchased it, I was still researching, and I was still searching stuff, and I was still looking around, and I didn't really know why I was looking around. I was just, interested. And I thought, a few months later I'll get over it. And then I didn't. And then I kind of questioned myself and thought, well, my next one, where do I buy? So I didn't really know the answer. And I thought, well, how does everyone else kind of figure it out? How do people figure out where they buy their next property? And that's when I continued to do more research and more education and podcasts and books and whatnot. And everyone kept talking about data. I was like, what is that? What does that even mean? Like, what is data? What is data? And I started building my own data sets on free information that I could find on the internet. And then I would just I would find random data on, a random suburb in Sydney one day, and I'll add it to my Excel sheet. And then, I'll be scrolling through some articles or something, and I find some more data and I add it to the spreadsheet. And then eventually I just kept adding all this data, and I built this really big spreadsheet with a lot of information on a lot of suburbs around the country. And then I kept adding this, and literally, like you said, till 2 a.m., I'm definitely a night owl. My brain doesn't really work in the morning. But after 5 o'clock, it starts working. So I was working till, early hours in the morning, and just building these spreadsheets for fun. Like, there was no goal. I wasn't buying another property. Like, I was just building them because I was interested. And eventually I found, more data and, paid data and, a different level of information that I was to what I had before. And I was, building my own sets. And then I was using these data sets to kind of track properties. And and no one really cared. None of my friends wanted to look at Excel. Like, no one cared about it, except for one of my mates who's an accountant. So he liked Excel sheets, and we used to hang out once a week. And I said, hey, check out my spreadsheet. It's pretty cool, huh? And before that point, I had helped a few of my mates buy some properties using my data and whatnot. They were like, oh, you kind of into it, give us a hand, help us out. And everyone's done well. And I showed my mate this spreadsheet. He goes, you can get paid to do this. I was like, what do you mean I get paid to do this? He's going to pay me to, buy property for him. He goes, no, there's something with a buyer's agency. And I looked it up, and I found out what it was. I actually already had my real estate license. So when I was just teaching myself and educating myself, I was like, well, I want to know what the real estate agents know. So I did the entire degree. I did the entire license to become a real estate agent, not just a certificate, the full license. So I did 2 years of education, online to TAFE and stuff for my own knowledge. Like, I just wanted to know what they knew. So I found out about this buyer's agent thing, and I was like, well, I already have the license. I can literally start tomorrow. So I did. I quit my job, and and I started First Brick. And actually, today is actually funny that we're having this conversation. Today is actually First Brick's birthday. So we started in 2019. The business started in 2019 today. So that's what, 3 years ago. And yeah, and that's just how it kind of came to be. And like, I never looked back. And so I didn't know about it. My mate told me about it. I already had the license because I told myself. I had the data because I was interested. And then I was like, this is what I want to do. I quit. My parents are a bit upset, but it was what I had to do. And since then, we've purchased a lot of property for people, and we've had a 100% success ratio. Everyone's made money, and better than the market averages by quite a bit as well. I think we're on over 150 property purchases now. So on a one-man team, so not bad. So that's kind
awesome,
of the story.
mate. Happy birthday. That's
Thanks, man.
That's so crazy. What a journey and a story it has been. And I love that you got your real estate license beforehand, because a lot of the guys are like, oh, this is buyer's agent's career, and now I have to go out and do everything and learn everything, and it takes ages to get in. I love that you had done the research and done the degree beforehand, or done the time and TAFE, and you'd be like, yep, I'm stepping out. That's
Yeah,
and it's also a pretty like ballsy move just to be like, yeah, I'm quitting my job and going out full time. Like how was that? Because I know for me, when I stepped out, I was like a transitional thing. Like I was doing something on the side when I had my main job, and then the side thing was enough to like keep me going. And so like I quit the main job, and then you keep growing
yeah,
the side thing, and then the side thing turns into 5 side things, and then one side thing does really well, and then you
yeah,
dad and grow
100%.
that. Like it was pretty crazy. But to just go like cold turkey switch is awesome.
Yeah, I guess I always knew, firstly, like I'm still registered as an optometrist. It's, you know, if I ever need to do like a casual, like there's always casual gigs, like optometrists get sick, so they need to find a they call them locums or casuals, and it pays well. So I knew at the time, like if if I needed money, I would just, you know, go locum a couple of days and I'll be right for 2 weeks, whatever it is. Like it pays well. So that's kind of how it was. And then, you know, it was obviously, like you said, odd jobs and like side stuff, and you know, I did a bit of sales work as well, for optical companies on the side, until, because you know, we didn't really get a paying customer for probably a year or something. So um, but it was just my mindset was, if I have to go work at Coles, I'll go work at Coles until I can figure it out, because this is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to build. It was sort of like, it was just like that moment where I've always been interested in business. I've always wanted to, and I've, you know, clearly I've had a few businesses before. I've always wanted to run a business. And then I've clearly got this passion for property. And then someone told me you can do both, like you can merge the two passions. It had to be this. And at the time, someone had introduced me to Gary Vee, and so maybe he pushed me a bit as well, because I was like consuming all his content like religiously. And and you know, Gary Vee is very much about, you know, follow your passion. If you're not doing what you don't like, if you're not doing what you like, stop doing it. So I was like, all right, I'll stop doing it. But it was definitely, I think it was just the more so, I knew whenever I needed money, I just go do some casual jobs as an optometrist, and yeah, get through for a little bit, and kept
Nice.
going like that.
I love it. It's good to always have that sort of back line, just in case, worst case scenario. And yeah, if you're more than willing to stack some shelves at Coles, you can almost get through anything and focus on it during the day.
Yeah.
Um, mate, there's so many of them out there, and everyone's got their favorite one. But if you had one sort of favorite property one liner, what would it be?
Um, yeah, I saw the question beforehand. I was trying to figure it out. You're right. There's a lot of one-liners. I guess it's probably not my. I wouldn't say it's my favorite one-liner, but I say maybe this is a very relevant one-liner to where we are today. It would be, "Don't listen to the noise." Um, Probably that. I think right now, I mean, we've had so many phone calls from potential clients or existing clients, or you know, people who we've worked with in the past, who are calling and saying, "Oh my God, the market's crashing, and what do we do? And the world's on fire." And I think my what I would say is, yeah, don't listen to the noise. Don't listen to your buddy at the barbecue on the weekend who's telling you, you know, X and Y. And I think, don't listen to the noise, regardless of what the noise is. Whether the market's crashing or whether the market is booming, don't listen to the noise. Stick to your course, and stick to what you know, or build yourself a team that knows what they're talking about. And we just, on our podcast the other day, we just did an episode about the current state of the market, and people think it's crashing and whatnot. And I was telling a story about, last week we put an offer on a property in Adelaide. There were 35 other offers on it, and we got absolutely smashed. So, you know, that market's not crashing. And I think when COVID started, I remember Matt Common, CEO of CBA, came out and said the market was going to crash, and we did an episode. I kind of called him an idiot. He's obviously not an idiot being the CEO of CBA, but my point was he's wrong, and he obviously was wrong. And I think it's just not listening to the noise. And yeah, build a team around you: buyer's agent, accountant, mortgage broker, financial planner, whoever it is, solicitors that understand the game, who've done it before, and they will lead you through it. Because at the end of the day, real estate is not a 30-day game. It's not a 2-year, in and out. We're buying it for 20, 30 years plus. So when you're looking with that kind of foresight, whatever's happening now doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, it's such a good one, and so important for where we are today. And I think one thing to remember, and this lesson starts to just compound more and more and more as I go along my journey, is everyone has an agenda. There's certain people that will write certain news articles because they have an agenda around that, and vice versa, like even the good and the bad. So take both with a bit of a grain of salt, and no matter how important or how much they own or what status they are, or if they're a CEO of CBA, like one thing I heard today, which was quite funny, was like everyone puts their pants on the same way in the morning. Like everyone is this, like we're all human beings. We all do the same thing. Doesn't matter where we are or how wealthy we are or where we're at. Like no one really knows where the market's going to go, and just take your own information, take your own concepts, take your own data and analyze that and have your own sort of foresight into it. There's so many professionals out there that can tell you anything at any point in time. And just have to, I think it's still good to listen to people who you know and trust and you rely on, but even with that, just take it as a grain of salt. And as you said, surround yourself with other people who have their own opinions and biases around it, and listen to everyone individually. Don't take just one person as this person knows the holy grail. Listen to everyone and see where their ideas and opinions are.
Yeah, for sure. I think just with knowing the context of that person's opinion as well is very important. And what I mean is, an accountant, for example, is a tax specialist. That's their job. So they might be all for negative gearing because they know from their perspective it helps you from a tax depreciation perspective. Whereas a mortgage broker might have a different opinion on the same topic because of their expertise is loans and financing and how to get the next loan. So not saying one person is wrong or the other, but you're right. Take everyone's opinion, but know where that advice is coming from, have the context, and then use data and information to form an educated opinion, rather than just listening to what the media tells you to believe.
Yeah, you nailed it, mate. Great one-liner. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it, and be keen to get. I say this to every guest. I got like a set of questions that I go through, but I'm going to come up with like a new set of questions and get everyone back on again. So when that happens, I'll hit you up, and it'd be great to have a chat again.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I appreciate being on here. It's an honor to be one of your guests, and looking forward to the next one. And we'll see you on our podcast as well soon.